Today, we'll continue our discussion on the Noble Truths, specifically the Eightfold Path. Last time, we offered a general overview touching upon its main points. Today, we'll conclude that overview and begin delving into the first element, right view. By now, diligent Buddhist practitioners should have committed these 8 elements to memory. Right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. It's crucial for us as followers of the Buddha to know the Eightfold Path by heart. This path follows a specific sequence. Right view is paramount. It's the correct understanding and perspective on spiritual practice. Only with this correct perspective can we foster right thought, which is the proper reflection and contemplation on life, the Dharma, and our practice. With right thought, we then develop right speech. From this point forward, every word a Buddhist disciple utters should be beneficial to others, align with the Dharma, and bring beauty and peace to the world. After cultivating right speech, we move to right action. This means that every action a Buddhist disciple undertakes should be righteous, creating merit for themselves and others. It involves doing only what alleviates suffering for oneself and others, and what helps the Dharma flourish. With right action, we then attain right livelihood. This refers to earning a living in a righteous way. For monastics, this means living off the support of devotees without deceit or manipulation, ensuring that offerings are made willingly and comfortably. For lay practitioners, it means engaging in professions without fraud or trickery, allowing prosperity to come easily and smoothly. The merits from right speech and right action naturally lead to a good right livelihood. We observe a practical reality here. Once our economic and material lives are stable, then we can truly dedicate ourselves to spiritual practice. This leads to right effort, which is the diligent cultivation that prepares us for meditation. It's only after accumulating sufficient merit and establishing a stable life that we can genuinely pursue right effort, before fully committing to practice. We need the merit of having created good karma and having a stable life. Once right effort is established, we diligently apply the methods to achieve right mindfulness. This means being unswervingly attentive, never distracted for a moment. If we master right mindfulness, never losing focus on our practice, we then achieve right concentration. This is entering the stages of meditation step by step. When the path of right concentration is fully traversed, we realize the noble truths and attain wisdom. This is the sequence that the Buddha established, simple yet incredibly logical, profound, and practical. The beauty of the Eightfold Path lies in its extreme practicality and its profound alignment with the law of karma, cause and effect. It is logical and cannot be opposed, added to, or subtracted from. We can only delve deeper into it, but no one would dare to alter its progression or claim that anything is missing or redundant. This is because all Buddhas of the 3 times, past, present, and future, have taught and will continue to teach the Eightfold Path in this precise sequence. No one can say more or teach it differently, for it is a truth that is both supremely profound and remarkably practical. This is its unique characteristic, the uniqueness of right view. The first element of the Eightfold Path is right view. This means having the correct perspective on spiritual practice. To cultivate this perspective, we first need a proper understanding of the Dharma and a deep understanding of life itself. This is quite unique to have a correct view of practice. We must possess a profound understanding of both Buddhist teachings and the world. Why? Because our practice should enable us to live peacefully within this life, not to escape from it. Therefore, a Buddhist disciple with right view is someone who possesses a profound understanding of life, even if one does not extensively engage with worldly affairs. A deep comprehension of life itself is essential for right view. This is why, for instance, our Venerable Abbot demonstrates such a profound understanding of life. Anyone seeking advice for their emotional struggles or daily dilemmas, no matter how complex, always receives satisfactory answers. This is the essence of right view, the ability to resolve issues related to relationships, family, career, or any setback in life. Interconnectedness of the Eightfold Path. We often say that in the Eightfold Path, the earlier elements create the later ones. For example, if we have a correct view of practice, we'll naturally have right thought, thinking correctly. However, conversely, the later elements also reinforce the earlier ones. If we reflect deeply on the true Dharma, it naturally strengthens our initial right view. Take right speech and right action, for instance. If we speak about generosity, our hands will naturally perform acts of generosity. If we talk about practicing the Buddha's name or meditation, we'll naturally engage in those practices ourselves. Our correct speech leads to correct action. But conversely, when we act correctly, it reinforces our correct speech. When we first speak, our understanding might be superficial. However, through practical experience, we uncover many complexities, and the next time we speak about it, we'll do so with greater accuracy. For example, if we speak about the practice of generosity, we might say, "Help anyone in need within your capacity." But when we actually begin to practice it, we realize how challenging it can be. Giving a lot might lead to regret, or others might misuse the money. There are many complexities in practicing generosity. When we engage in it, we discover numerous subtle points, realizing that giving money isn't always simple. The next time we speak about generosity, we'll do so with great care and caution, rather than simply stating that giving is always right. If we give without thought and the recipient misuses the funds, we might feel a pang of regret. When we give, we must ensure the money brings benefit, which then reinforces our theoretical understanding of generosity. The same applies to countless other matters. When we speak correctly, we will act correctly. But when we act correctly, our speech will be reinforced and refined. This is the unique aspect of the Eightfold Path. The preceding element creates the succeeding one, but the succeeding element also reinforces the preceding one. The importance of right livelihood. Within the Eightfold Path, right livelihood means maintaining a righteous and proper material life. As Buddhists, we must avoid professions that create negative karma, such as selling alcohol, engaging in animal slaughter, dealing in weapons, or, absolutely, selling drugs. When people have sufficient merit, their lives become easier. They find righteous professions and their work flows smoothly, reducing hardship. Worrying about basic sustenance consumes a lot of mental energy. We can't peacefully listen to the Dharma if we're constantly wondering where our next meal will come from. Those sitting here listening to the Dharma must have ensured their rice bins are full or that they won't have to worry about food while meditating. This is a very practical reality. As our ancestors said, you need sustenance to uphold the Dharma. Therefore, in the progression of the Eightfold Path, the Buddha included a path for us to build a solid foundation of merit, ensuring a comfortable material life. Only then can we speak of profound spiritual liberation, which lies in mindfulness and concentration. Remember, in the Eightfold Path, the deeper spiritual aspects are at the end, mindfulness and concentration. But to achieve mindfulness and concentration, we must first cultivate the preceding elements to create merit and secure an easy material life. Some people hold unrealistic or impractical views, claiming that poverty shouldn't be an obstacle to practice. They might say, "Don't let poverty stop you from practicing." However, this is an incomplete understanding. People who are genuinely struggling might not be able to practice. The most practical approach when guiding others to practice is to help them create merit. Ensuring they have abundant merit is fundamental. It's a grave error for practitioners in this world to avoid making merit. Each of us must remember the progression of the Eightfold Path. The initial parts are entirely dedicated to merit-making, living rightly and acting rightly to accumulate merit. Only when our economic and material lives are stable do we know that we can then delve into spiritual matters. If we travel, read books, or listen to Dharma talks where the speaker discourages merit-making, hinders it, or even criticizes it, we can conclude that the speaker is not following the Eightfold Path correctly. Don't assume that everyone who teaches the Dharma is teaching truly. Some lack a basic foundation. Regardless of what Buddhist practice one follows, if one doesn't make an effort to create merit, they are deviating from the Buddhist path. The value of merit, beyond simply having an easy material life to facilitate deeper spiritual practice, mindfulness and concentration. There's another crucial aspect. A person with merit is a valuable person in this world. If we lack merit, our human existence becomes a constant struggle. Look at those living on the streets, without homes or shelter. When it rains, they huddle under awnings wrapped in ragged cloths found somewhere, eating meager scraps. Such a human existence isn't far removed from that of an animal, simply because they lack merit. Our value in this world is determined by how much merit we possess. Therefore, before aspiring to the value of a noble being, we must first attain the value of a complete human being. This underscores the importance of right livelihood, which the Buddha emphasized as practical and crucial. We must not forget this. The journey from right view to right concentration. Let's reiterate, right view is the starting point, the correct perspective for spiritual practice. The culmination of the Eightfold Path is right concentration. We achieve right concentration by progressing from right view. So, right concentration is the result and right view is the beginning. Through right view, we gradually cultivate until we attain right concentration. Conversely, once we enter right concentration, it naturally clarifies and strengthens our right view. For example, theoretically, we might understand the concept of impermanence. But when we achieve right concentration, reaching a spiritual state, we understand it much more profoundly. Consider the Heart Sutra's famous line, "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Form is not other than emptiness. Emptiness is not other than form." Before, when we heard form is emptiness, emptiness is form, we might have found it strange. With explanations from teachers, we might have gained some understanding, but not a deep one. However, the day we achieve right concentration, we suddenly grasp it. So that's what form is, and that's what emptiness is. Form is existence, like this flower vase, something that exists. Emptiness is the empty space. But the flower vase is also emptiness, and emptiness is also existence. We might be surprised, but once we attain right concentration, we understand immediately. We understand that existence and emptiness are interdependent. Do you understand now? You do, right? You can teach now. For those with good roots, the profound wisdom of prajna, wisdom, is often intuitively accepted and appreciated, even if not fully understood. For example, if we have good roots, we might read prajna scriptures that say all phenomena are empty. No sky, no trees, no leaves, no rivers, no mountains, no houses, no self, no others. We hear empty, and feel something sublime. We don't dare to refute it, and we sense an underlying truth, even if we don't fully understand why everything is empty. This indicates good roots, merits from past lives that allow us to appreciate the Dharma. But those without good roots, hearing everything is empty, might feel uncomfortable, disbelieving, and unwilling to accept it, despite not understanding why it's all empty. They will not feel the same appreciation. However, it's only when we achieve right concentration that we truly comprehend why everything is empty. We understand immediately the driving force, aspiration for enlightenment. Within the Eightfold Path, there's an unspoken but ever-present companion, the aspiration for enlightenment. The thirst for truth, the fervor for practice, the desire for an ideal, a dream, a hope. For instance, our thirst for truth drives us to cultivate right view. If we don't know the truth of life or the Dharma, this aspiration makes us seek the knowledge to develop right view. Once we understand the Dharma, we become enthusiastic, willingly putting in the effort to cultivate right thought. Or, if we genuinely love the Dharma, we open our mouths to speak words of Dharma. Otherwise, we'd only speak about worldly, mundane matters, endlessly. With the aspiration for truth, for enlightenment, for practice, we begin to cultivate right action, making merit. Those who lack this burning desire, this dream, this hope, won't undertake right action. They'll feel hesitant, procrastinating on going to Dharma talks because their hearts aren't alight with this burning desire. The element of desire and aspiration is the powerful force that drives us to practice the Eightfold Path. This emotional aspiration differs from diligence. Diligence is determination, while this aspiration is an unseen, intangible power that compels our practice. Why do we possess this aspiration for truth, for enlightenment? Because this aspiration compels us to practice the Eightfold Path, otherwise we wouldn't bother. For example, when we listen to Dharma talks, study scriptures, or read Dharma books, we are cultivating right view. But it's our aspiration that makes us willing to listen and read. Where does this aspiration come from? So many people in this world have no such aspiration. They only care for eating, drinking, and entertainment. Where does this noble aspiration, this lofty dream, come from? It's a beautiful and noble feeling. Therefore, all of us present at this lecture today, to varying degrees, possess this aspiration for truth, making us truly precious. We have the right to commend ourselves a little, to praise ourselves just a bit. Where does this aspiration come from? From the depths of our hearts? Is it something we can just pick up and put in our pockets? Someone said, from past lives cultivation. That's close, but not quite. From past lives cultivation is correct. What did we do in past lives to spontaneously develop this aspiration for truth, for liberation, for enlightenment in this life? What did we do? Respecting noble beings. That person gets 10 points. Respecting noble beings is the correct answer. In some past life, we must have met a truly pure practitioner. If we had met the Buddha himself, we would have attained enlightenment by now. But perhaps we haven't had the fortune to meet the Buddha yet. However, we likely encountered a noble being, a highly accomplished or genuine practitioner, and our hearts felt reverence. It is that reverence from a past life that has transformed into this aspiration for liberation, for enlightenment, for truth today. If we had never revered noble beings in past lives, then in this life our only aspiration would be for eating and entertainment. Therefore, all of us here today have probably had the fortune to meet a noble being in a past life. Perhaps someone as perfectly beautiful as our venerable abbot. We are Southerners, and today is not Sunday, it's Wednesday, and we still make the effort to come and listen to the Dharma. This is truly commendable. Thus, we don't know if we'll meet a noble being in this life, but we hope to meet them right now in this life, so that we can express our reverence and nourish our aspiration for enlightenment for many future lives. So, in this life, we must seek out noble beings. Where can we find them? On the upper floor? Another thing is that when we enter the pagoda to prostrate before the Buddha, that very act of prostration, with a heart full of aspiration and utmost reverence, also plants good seeds for countless future lives, ensuring that we always have a burning desire for spiritual practice. Therefore, every week we should go to the pagoda, ascend the upper floor. Every day we should prostrate before the Buddha's altar. Remember this, the 6 key elements of right view. We've now introduced the Eightfold Path generally. Let's delve into the first element, right view. The word kien, view, literally means to see. However, because ancient and modern terms differ, simply saying correct seeing isn't quite right. So, we translate right view as correct perspective on spiritual practice or correct approach to practice. Remember this, before we begin practicing, we must have a perspective on what practice entails. Without a perspective, we'll practice aimlessly. The first step in the Eightfold Path is right view for this very reason. However, to cultivate right view, we need 2 correct understandings. Understanding of Buddhist teachings. We must understand the Dharma, the principles of Buddhism. Understanding of life. We must understand worldly existence. Why both? Because the ultimate purpose of the Dharma is to alleviate the suffering of this very life. We must understand both. Therefore, a monastic who has spent many years in the monastery but knows little about worldly affairs will, firstly, have a shallow perspective on practice. Secondly, when they teach the Dharma, their words will lack depth because they aren't practical. A practitioner, to possess right view, must understand both the scriptures and life. Those who do are truly capable. However, if one only studies scriptures without understanding life, they won't achieve right view. How does one understand life? Does one need to experience many hardships or live extensively in the world? Not necessarily. One simply needs to be a keen observer. There are many magazines and books one can read. Remember the book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, a Nobel laureate? It tells the story of Siddhartha who lives a privileged life, then becomes an ascetic, meets the Buddha, and later immerses himself in worldly life, even with a courtesan. When he experiences failure, disappointment, heartbreak, and unemployment, he becomes a ferryman on a river. The story is about how he attains enlightenment while ferrying people. When he was a strict ascetic, he didn't attain enlightenment, nor did he when he was deeply embedded in worldly life. It was only when he became a ferryman, combining the spiritual wisdom he learned as an ascetic with his worldly experiences, that he truly began to practice. That's when he truly knew how to practice. The story is well crafted. However, for modern Buddhist practitioners, it's not necessary to engage in excessive worldly experiences like going to brothels, gambling dens, or nightclubs. Not at all. One only needs to read books. There are many newspapers, magazines, and books available. We can calmly observe, and by understanding both the Dharma and life, we will gradually cultivate right view. When we begin our practice, we must have a correct map in hand, showing us the right direction. This map will lead us from the wilderness to a bright shore. We must possess this map. If the map is correct, we will reach a peaceful place of enlightenment and liberation. But if the map is wrong and we follow it, by the time we are exhausted and drained, we will find ourselves at a chasm, a thorny bush, or a cliff with no way forward. We will die of old age, fatigue, loneliness, sorrow, and pain. Therefore, the initial map is crucial. If the map is wrong, we can practice until old age and death without results, or only achieve a result that we realize is wrong when it's too late. What a waste of an entire lifetime of practice. So, it's vital to find the correct map from the very beginning of our practice. How to gauge progress. 100% sign that someone is practicing correctly is evident where. Where do we look? Look at their face. For example, if you meet a Dharma friend after 3 years, and both of you have been practicing during that time, when you meet again, if their face is more serene, radiant, benevolent, and beautiful, then they're on the right path. However, if after 3 years, their face looks worse, a bit darker, even slightly, it indicates a flaw in their practice. So, remember to look at each other's faces, and take a selfie of your own face now, and then again in 3 years, and compare them side by side. Then you'll know if you're practicing correctly. But this is on the condition that you don't use any modern cosmetics. Otherwise, it's easy to be deceived. You might see a beautiful face, but upon speaking with them, realize there's no inner progress. If their face is beautiful due to advanced cosmetic products, that's something else. Why are you laughing so hard? Did I hit a nerve? This is a truth. For example, when we meet an elderly Buddhist practitioner whose face has become more beautiful and benevolent, we rejoice. We know for sure that this person, upon passing away, will be reborn in a favorable realm. The realm we will be reborn in is manifested right now, not after death when we consult a fortune teller. Someone asked us, Master, can you tell me where my father went after he passed away? I replied, you'll have to wait 3 to 5 years, or go to a fortune teller. No, it's not like that. You can tell by looking at their face just before death. Even if they're ill, their face should be radiant. If you've been practicing for 3 years and your face isn't radiant, you need to re-examine your practice. This is a warning for everyone to know if you're on the right path. The destination of right view. Now, let's return to the map. The map of right view must have a clear destination, consisting of 3 points: liberation, transcending the cycle of rebirth, achieving freedom from defilements and suffering, enlightenment, possessing sharp wisdom able to see the profound truths of the Dharma, ability to guide sentient beings, knowing the Dharma, understanding how to present it effectively. This too is wisdom. The map must clearly outline the journey from where we stand now. Remember, from where we stand, through many paths, overcoming challenges, crossing deserts, and navigating waves, to reach the clear destination of enlightenment. Why from where we stand? Because some maps start from a very unfamiliar place, not where we are, so we can't follow them. This means our perspective on practice must be very basic and fundamental. We shouldn't discuss overly lofty concepts because we are currently at a very basic level. As new Buddhist practitioners observing the precepts, doing good deeds, practicing prostrations, and perhaps a little meditation. So, the perspective on practice, the map guiding us, must start from that very point, not from the level of someone who has already achieved enlightenment. We wouldn't understand it. Similarly, when we speak about the Dharma to someone else, we must understand their current standing. If it's an intellectual who hasn't yet believed in the Dharma, in karma, or in rebirth, we must offer them a perspective on practice, a map, or explanations that are appropriate for their intellect, their scientific and social knowledge, and their life experience. This allows them to build a basic faith in karma and rebirth, and a basic concept of liberation and enlightenment before we guide them deeper. We should never talk about a perspective on practice that is far removed from our current standing. Each of us should be mindful of this. Drawing your own map. Who gives us this map, this right view? This perspective on practice? Do we draw it ourselves? Yes, we draw it ourselves. Remember, no one can simply give it to us. This map must always be drawn by ourselves. We must take a blank sheet of paper, a pen, mark our current position, and gradually draw it out. But what do we base our drawing on? What do we rely on? We rely on the maps of others. We copy them. We cheat, right? We remember in school when we took exams, we'd often copy. Now it's different. Teachers used to punish us for copying, but now it's encouraged that we borrow others' maps and draw our own. How do we borrow others' maps? How do we copy them? Through learning. We learn from Dharma masters, from listening to lectures, where we grasp the perspective on practice. That's one way to draw our own map. Where else? In the ancient scriptures. If we have the ability, we can borrow ideas from the scriptures and draw our own path of practice. Where else? From many books written by practitioners. We can consult them, take what's suitable and leave what isn't, and then draw our own map. So, is everyone's map the same? Not exactly. They might be similar in general outline, but in detail there will be many differences. Some prefer a higher starting point, others a lower one. But to establish right view, we must first learn. So, the essential task for cultivating right view in Buddhism is learning. Therefore, anyone who diligently studies the Dharma is cultivating right view. Cultivating right view isn't about doing anything extraordinary, it's simply about passively learning. Diligently seeking out good books to study. However, when we borrow others' maps and copy them, there's a risk. We don't know if their map is correct, do we? We don't know. Even a book's contents don't guarantee that the author has the correct right view or a correct map. And even a Dharma master, someone who speaks eloquently and tirelessly from the Dharma seat, doesn't guarantee that they are teaching correctly. It's truly significant. Therefore, to cultivate right view and find the true Dharma, the correct map, it depends on luck. If we are lucky, we meet a virtuous teacher, a good friend, or find good books and scriptures and we learn a correct perspective on practice and thus walk the right path. But if we are unlucky, we might follow a misguided teacher or someone with a shallow understanding and we'll base our map on their teachings, leading us astray. This relies heavily on past merit, on good fortune. We don't know how many of us sitting here are lucky or unlucky today. Why? If the person speaking now is teaching correctly, then you are lucky. But if the person speaking now is rambling nonsense, then today is an unlucky day. You've wasted an hour and a half of your time and you might even follow a wrong path. So we don't know if it's luck or unluckiness. It's better to listen while chanting the Buddha's name, just in case. Please, just speak correctly. Learning from the enlightened and the skilled. So whose teachings should we follow? Whose perspective on practice should we learn from? Who is that person? You said, anyone we meet in life who speaks the Buddha's name. That's good, but not enough. We must choose to learn from someone who has achieved results in their practice, meaning they have attained enlightenment. That's fundamental. But who has attained enlightenment that we can follow and learn from now? Can we find them? It's very difficult to find them. Some enlightened beings often remain silent and hidden, residing in remote mountains and caves. The person speaking rambles on like this because they haven't attained enlightenment. But in principle, of course, we must learn the Dharma from an enlightened person. However, in reality, it's very difficult to know who has attained enlightenment. It's hard to find an enlightened being, even a Buddha, right now. And here's another strange thing that the Buddha himself mentioned. Even an arhat may not always be a skillful teacher. So, even if we are fortunate enough to meet an enlightened being, be cautious, because they might not teach effectively. This is a very peculiar thing. The Buddha said that an arhat is not always a skillful teacher. If we are fortunate enough to meet a true master who is both enlightened and a skillful teacher, then our life is truly blessed with immense fortune. That's extreme luck. Usually, it's difficult. Usually, a good teacher might not be enlightened and an enlightened person might not be a skillful teacher. A person who is both enlightened and a skillful teacher is a rare gem in this world. If anyone meets such a person, please let me know so I can go and learn from them too. I'm serious. For example, an enlightened being might teach. To meditate, just sit and focus on your breath. Be aware of your in-breath, aware of your out-breath. They might teach very simply. We might practice for a few days and feel insane, because their simple instruction, though correct for them, isn't detailed enough for us. It leads us to focus on our breath, becoming tense and straining, leading us astray. While they might be enlightened and know how to practice, they might not explain it in a detailed way that is suitable for us. This is very difficult. So, if we can't find an enlightened being, who should we learn from? We learn from a skilled and eloquent Dharma master. That's it. It's general but important. Here's the principle if we cannot find an enlightened being. We learn from Dharma masters who are eloquent and skilled at teaching. We listen to their teachings and find them logical and appealing. That is, the speaker's words are reasonable and logical, and their teaching style is engaging. Such individuals are worth learning from. The balance of logic and appeal. This phrase, logical and appealing, contains two important factors. Logical pertains to intellect and appealing pertains to emotion. A good Dharma master must achieve both. They must deliver teachings that are logical and make sense to us, allowing us to view them objectively without bias or preconceived notions. Especially for intellectuals who are new to the Dharma, they must find the teachings logical from a scientific, social, and life perspective. If the Dharma master achieves this initial factor of logical, they've succeeded. And their presentation style with examples and humorous anecdotes or simple, understandable language makes it appealing, touching our emotions. Combining both makes an excellent Dharma master. We must be very careful about this. A good Dharma talk comprises two things: high logical reasoning and reasonableness, engaging and appealing delivery. There are cases where a Dharma talk is very appealing and engaging but illogical and contrary to the Dharma. A Buddhist practitioner encountering such a talk is incredibly unlucky. Why? Because the engaging and appealing nature of the talk makes us accept it and follow its teachings, leading us astray. The danger lies in the fact that the speaker might be very skilled and captivating, and we become so captivated that we accept the talk without realizing its illogical aspects. We listen and go astray without even knowing it. This is truly frightening. For example, if we are new to the temple and hear a Dharma talk where the speaker says, "Friends, everything in this world is empty, right?" If you understand that, you've attained enlightenment and liberation. See no house, no door, no wife, no children, no sky, no earth, no self, no others. We hear this and feel startled, very excited, right? We like it, but if we follow that, we'll be lost. It's not that simple. One cannot attain enlightenment in a single lifetime by simply understanding that everything is empty. Enlightenment requires traversing the Eightfold Path, accumulating countless merits, deeply understanding karma, cultivating virtuous ethics, possessing great compassion, and practicing various stages of meditation. It's not that simple. But if someone says, "Oh, it's just empty," and you're enlightened, that leads to delusion and chaos. Sometimes a Dharma master speaks very forcefully and we are so captivated. Yet we don't realize the underlying errors. For instance, they might say, "Don't bother with anything in this life. Just chant the Buddha's name and pray to be reborn in Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land. Leave everything behind. This life is temporary. The Pure Land is everlasting. Let go of everything. Just diligently chant the Buddha's name and pray for rebirth." They speak so strongly and we find it appealing. But this is a grave error. Why? To understand why it's an error, let's compare it with a different religion that has caused terror in the world, radical Islam. Let's look at their two perspectives. Their methods are terribly wrong, but one of their core beliefs is very correct. The goal for a follower of Islam is to die and return to Allah. That's their goal. And the means to achieve that is to dedicate their lives to spreading their faith. The affairs of this world are Allah's concern. While living, they only focus on spreading the faith. By any means necessary, bombs, guns, knives, everything. They compel people to convert. They succeed in spreading their faith. They don't care about anything else. Their view is, just spread the faith and when you die, you'll return to Allah. That view is correct. But in our Buddhist practice, what do we sometimes cling to? We only care about going to the Buddha's Pure Land and don't care about spreading the Dharma, right? We Buddhists practice this way. We don't preach the Dharma. We just focus on chanting the Buddha's name to be reborn in the Pure Land. We are going against the view of Islam. This is why Buddhism is gradually declining while Islam is growing stronger. Despite their terrifying and violent methods, they are moving in the right direction. We, on the other hand, practice genuinely, but our method of application is flawed. We only care about going to the Buddha's Pure Land and don't care about spreading the Dharma. Today, let's change our perspective. We should strive to spread the Dharma to everyone. As for our rebirth in the Pure Land, the Buddha will take care of us justly. Do you agree? Does this make sense? Does it make more sense? It makes more sense, right? This means that while living in this world, we should only strive to live beautifully with others, bringing joy and happiness to them and bringing the Dharma to them. As for whether we go to the Pure Land after death, the Buddha will take care of us fairly. Do you agree? Remember this. Don't just focus on chanting the Buddha's name in your heart without caring for others. If you do, you might not achieve results. The foundation of right view. The Buddha's teachings. Where do we begin to establish right view, our perspective on practice? We begin from the Buddha. Remember, as disciples of the Buddha, our perspective on practice begins by learning the Dharma directly from the Buddha. We don't show bias towards any particular master. Remember that no matter how skilled our teacher or patriarch, they are still inferior to the Buddha. Therefore, when we practice and cultivate right view, we first learn from the Buddha and revere him. We prostrate before the Buddha, praying for his blessings to help us gain right view, meet good scriptures, good methods, and good teachers. Now, we also have audio and video recordings. May we encounter good recordings and videos. When we learn from the Buddha, we do two things. Review the ancient scriptures, adhering strictly to the Buddha's teachings. Prostrate and pray, asking the Buddha to bless us so we meet good teachers and friends. Remember, if we don't pray and are overconfident in our own intellect, wandering around learning from various sources, one day we might encounter a false teacher without realizing it. Therefore, we must remember to diligently prostrate before the Buddha, praying for his blessings to meet good teachers. And crucially, we must never show bias towards any particular master. Even if we consider a master to be highly enlightened, remember that they are still not equal to the Buddha. Therefore, we must always cross-reference their teachings with the Buddha's words, holding firm to the Buddha's instructions. Our master's teachings, however good, might not be entirely accurate. Remember this. There's also this case. A very famous person, perhaps even with psychic powers. We might determine that they are not equal to the Buddha. If such a person boldly claims to be equal to the Buddha or to be a replacement for the Buddha, what should we conclude? Immediately, without question, that they are a false teacher. Don't go near them. Do you agree? Agree, right? Remember this. Our initial perspective must be that no one can become a Buddha at this very moment. Unless Maitreya Buddha appears, no one else can be a Buddha. Everyone else is still inferior to the Buddha. Remember that. So, if anyone proudly declares that they are now the Buddha, or that by practicing in such a way they are equal to Shakyamuni Buddha, we immediately conclude that they are a false teacher. Don't go near them. Correct, but not enough. To learn right view, we need a magic phrase to keep in our hearts. What is it? Om Mani Padme Hum, you say? That's correct, but not enough. The phrase we must keep in our hearts is correct, but not enough. What does this mean? It means that even if we learn something correct, it's never enough. For example, we learn about the law of karma. Whoever sows what kind of seed will reap what kind of fruit. Whoever brings suffering to others will experience suffering in return. Whoever throws acid on others will have acid thrown back at them. Is that correct? Absolutely correct. It's the law of karma, right? But is it enough? Not yet. What should we do? We must continue to learn, contemplate, and practice to understand more deeply. So remember, to cultivate right view throughout this life and into future lives, we must always keep the phrase correct, but not enough in our hearts. If we learn a profound principle, remember, correct, but not enough. Some Buddhist practitioners, after hearing a profound Dharma talk, might say, "Oh, I've learned enough to become a Buddha now." That's incorrect. Is it enough? Not at all. It's correct, yes, it's very good, but it's never enough. Many people with good intentions come to us and say, "Master, I just need to practice these specific moral principles to become a Buddha." Is that correct? Never. Never enough. We must continue to learn more each day. It's endless, right? So it's correct, and it's good, but it's never enough. If we delve deeper into morality, it's boundless, infinite. Remember this. Or, someone might grasp the concept that all is empty and say, "Oh, I understand this now. Have I achieved liberation?" Not at all. It's never enough. Grasping one concept is a mistake. Some practitioners come to me and say, "Master, Buddhism is just this or that." This leads to extremism, stubbornness, and narrow-mindedness. Buddhism is boundless, infinite, diverse, and comprehensive. There's no just this. Even the phrase, "just chanting this Buddha's name will lead to rebirth in the Western Pure Land," is incorrect. In Buddhism, there is no just. Never say you are enough. It might be correct, but it's never enough. So, the magic phrase for learning right view is correct, but not enough. Remember this phrase every day. As we practice and learn, we will understand more deeply and in greater detail. This is also the spirit of science. There's a funny thing. Science and religion have opposing points of view. In science, something that's a new discovery is considered very good, very correct, very precise. The later discoveries are better, more correct, more precise. Right? But in religion, the older something is, the better it is, right? It's the opposite. This is what I tell my non-Buddhist friends. They might say that in the past, people believed in one God who created everything. Now, whatever people say, that belief remains eternally true in their religion. But science, on the other hand, progresses every day, discovering new things. It's not so simple. There isn't just one divine being who created heaven, earth, and the universe. Later discoveries become more accurate. The only difference is that in Buddhism, the Dharma was originated and established by a supremely great enlightened being. So, the Buddhist teachings cannot be wrong no matter how many thousands of years pass. They cannot be wrong. The only thing is that at that time, the Buddha couldn't speak in too much detail because writing hadn't been invented yet. The Buddha couldn't speak too long, he could only transmit teachings orally. So, the Buddha spoke concisely to make it easy to remember. Today, we have the right to delve into the details, and this is acceptable. The Buddha gave us the correct and eternally true foundation. For 1,000,000 more eons, we will seek the enough. We are still seeking the enough for 1,000,000 more eons. As for correct, we already have the correct starting point from the Buddha's teachings. In the Mahayana Sutras, it says, even a 10th-stage bodhisattva has not yet fully realized right view. How much less so for a Dharma master, right? How much less so for someone who has just attained a little psychic power? Never. Even a 10th-stage bodhisattva hasn't fully realized right view as perfectly as a Buddha. So, no one in this world should claim to be the ultimate truth. Never. It might be correct, but to say it's enough is already a huge mistake. What we understand about the Dharma today might be like dust compared to what we will understand in 20 years. For example, today you, as Buddhist practitioners, are listening to the Dharma. And these teachings feel very new and exciting. You're beginning to form your perspective on practice. But if you practice correctly and diligently 20 years from now, you'll look back at what you understood today and realize it was just like dust. So every day we must progress. Never stop at any point and claim to be correct. If we become complacent, we stop progressing immediately. Therefore, in establishing right view, humility is crucial. Never claim to be completely correct. Never claim to be completely enough. Remember that. Humility is important. If we are proud, we will no longer be able to learn. We recall a passage from the sutras where the Buddha, holding a handful of leaves in the forest, said, "What I know is like the leaves in this forest, and what I have taught is like the leaves in my hand." This means that the Dharma is boundless. The scriptures have not yet exhausted everything. To speak of all the leaves in the forest would take countless eons. A Buddhist disciple needs very broad knowledge to progress and to help others, but don't be overly ambitious in learning too much, as that can hinder learning. Learn naturally, as if not learning at all. This is how we learn right view. Right view, the law of karma. Now, let's delve into the first right view, the law of karma. To follow Buddhism, we must first understand the law of karma clearly, thoroughly, and correctly. There should be no doubt. The fundamental principle is, whoever sows what kind of cause will reap what kind of fruit. This is also known as retribution for evil actions. How we treat other sentient beings is how the karmic retribution will return to us later. The law of karma requires interaction between sentient beings, not just isolated actions. When we delve into the details of karma, or when it extends to the entire universe, only the Buddha knows it all. We cannot fully comprehend it. We can only grasp some fundamental principles. However, if one understands karma more deeply and in greater detail, that person possesses more right view. Fundamentally, in the law of karma, actions performed between one person and another create karma. Actions that have no bearing on others generally don't create karma. For example, if you stroll in your yard, walking back and forth, does that create karma? No, it doesn't affect anyone. Unless you intentionally walk back and forth to obstruct someone's view while they're looking at something, then it creates karma. But if you're just walking in your yard, not bothering anyone, it doesn't create karma. Or if you stand alone in your room clipping your fingernails, does that create karma? No, it doesn't. So, if you want to avoid creating karma, just stand in your room clipping your fingernails. If you interact with another person, it immediately creates karma. Interactions that affect others create karma. For instance, if you dig a ditch to lay a water pipe for your house, and then you refill it but not carefully and cars drive over it, causing bumps, that creates karma. You might leave the road bumpy for 3 months and every time a car passes, it bumps. If 200 cars pass daily and each causes a bump and this goes on for 3 months, then you realize you didn't fill it properly. In this life or a future one, you'll experience tens of thousands of bumps yourself. You'll walk unevenly, stumble, just like those cars going over the bumps you created. So, if anyone wants to walk smoothly in the future, they should go and dig up roads for others to drive over. Then, they'll naturally walk beautifully. This means that anything we do that affects others creates karma and brings retribution. Even a trivial thought can create karma. If you look at a tree and count its leaves, does that create karma? No, it doesn't affect anyone. But if your thought involves morality, for example, if you become arrogant, thinking you are superior to others, that begins to create karma. There's interaction, there's a target, other sentient beings, and it creates karma. For instance, if you're not doing anything, just sitting and thinking that you love everyone here, loving them wholeheartedly, does that create karma? Yes, it begins to create merit in your body. So now as you sit and listen, just softly think in your mind, I love everyone here, I love them dearly. You'll accumulate a little merit to use later, remember that. Or, if you don't speak out loud, but you constantly criticize everyone in your mind, thinking bad thoughts about them without saying anything for fear of being disliked, does that create karma? Yes, naturally. People will later avoid you, or you might develop strange illnesses for no apparent reason. This is because inner thoughts that no one knows about still create karmic retribution externally. Intertwined karma and merit. Here's another point, the karma of one person can affect many others. Why? Because karma arises from interactions between people in past lives. But when the karmic retribution manifests, it spills over everywhere, spreading from one person to another. For example, when someone becomes rich, it's guaranteed that those around them will also benefit. Their parents, siblings, relatives will receive help. Unless the person is incredibly stingy, hitting the lottery and then hiding. Pretending to still eat rice with fish sauce, that's a different story. But normally, if you win the lottery, you'll definitely share your wealth and help others. So, if anyone here wins the lottery, please let me know. Don't go on pretending to eat rice with fish sauce afterwards. That's karmic retribution. For instance, spiritual achievements are also governed by karma. If we live a good life, constantly fearing causing others sadness or trouble, always helping them find peace and joy, supporting them in their needs and difficulties, then because of our help, their minds become less worried, less anxious, less sorrowful. These positive feelings that bring peace to others' minds are very beneficial to our own. When we practice meditation, our minds become peaceful. It's as if all the accumulated merits from helping others create inner stability and concentration. So we must live well with others, helping them find peace. When they find peace and joy, then our minds will also achieve peace and concentration. However, that concentration doesn't last indefinitely. Why? Because the moments of peace and joy we bring to sentient beings are not infinite, boundless, or absolute. They are limited. We might live a good life, but only to a certain extent, not absolutely, infinitely, or boundlessly. So, the concentration we experience in our minds, just like the concentration we experience in heavenly realms, will eventually run out after a certain number of years, 1500, 2500 years, etc. Then we will be reborn and experience mental agitation again with worries and anxieties. However, a person who lives altruistically, bringing endless, boundless, absolute joy to others, constantly, never seeking anything for themselves in this life and countless future lives, just bringing joy to others, that person can achieve liberation. At that point, the joy in their mind is infinite and absolute, never declining, never ceasing. So, if someone wants to achieve liberation, what must they do? They must live completely for others. We haven't had the chance to lecture on the Diamond Sutra yet, but this is clearly stated there. When Subhuti asked the Buddha how to subdue the mind and its wandering thoughts, the Buddha gave an incredibly astonishing answer. Lead all sentient beings to nirvana. That's the ultimate answer. Our lives, by bringing joy and Dharma to all sentient beings, will naturally lead to our own minds becoming peaceful. The Diamond Sutra states this very clearly. This is consistent with the law of karma. When we have the opportunity, we will discuss the Diamond Sutra. Merit-making, not for selfish gain. Remember, making merit and living well with others is a crucial aspect of spiritual practice. However, if someone refuses to make merit or discourages others from making merit or even criticizes merit-making, that is a wrong view. We must understand this clearly. We must make endless merit to become a Buddha. Don't think that making merit is just for enjoying blessings. That's not the point for a true practitioner. When we have merit, our minds become peaceful. Some people say, don't make merit. Making merit leads to rebirth in human or heavenly realms. Endless cycles of rebirth. They don't understand the Dharma deeply enough. They don't understand that when we have merit, we have the freedom to enjoy it or not. A person with merit is free. A person without merit is bound. Have you heard this before? We've discussed this in our Buddhism and Society series. A person with merit is free. For example, if you see a beautiful car and want to buy it, if you have the money, you buy it immediately. You are free. But if you want a beautiful car but don't have the money to buy it, you are not free. Right? Or if you want to go on a trip and you have the money, you can book a tour and go immediately because you have merit. But if you want to travel but don't have the money, you can't go. You lose your freedom. So having merit means having freedom. Similarly, when you have merit, whether you want to enjoy it or not is up to you. If you have too much money, you can give it away. You are free. If you want to enjoy it, then enjoy it. So have merit first. Anyone who says, don't make merit, making merit leads to rebirth in human or heavenly realms and endless cycles of rebirth, does not understand the Dharma thoroughly, and that is a wrong view. We must be cautious. A strong nation is also a result of its entire populace having merit. For example, Vietnam is still poor because its people individually don't have much merit yet. If every Vietnamese citizen were to accumulate vast amounts of merit, our nation would immediately become strong. Remember this. The same applies to Buddhism. If all Buddhist practitioners, from the humblest to the wealthiest, have immense merit, then Buddhism will immediately flourish and the Dharma will shine brightly. But if Buddhist practitioners live quietly, refuse to make merit, and lack merit, Buddhism will decline immediately. Remember this. Therefore, making merit is very important. When we make merit for ourselves, we are actually contributing to the glory of Buddhism and the strength of our nation. So, we must diligently make merit. Right view, the Four Noble Truths. The second right view is understanding the Four Noble Truths. A Buddhist disciple must firmly grasp the Four Noble Truths. Where do we learn about them? We are learning them right now. You shouldn't wonder where. We're discussing them indirectly. Right view. The doctrine of Anatta, non-self. The third right view is the doctrine of Anatta or non-self. This is a fundamental principle in Buddhism that we must firmly grasp so we don't go astray. Normally, we have an ego and we cling to it. Because of this clinging to ego, we experience greed, anger, jealousy, envy, selfishness, competitiveness, and countless other afflictions. This ego is an illusion, but it feels very real, making us believe we have a true self. It's like when someone rapidly spins a burning stick, we see a circle of fire, right? But is there really a circle of fire? No. It's just a stick spinning very fast. Similarly, we don't truly have a real self, it's just mental states following each other too quickly. At any given moment, in a single instant, our minds are thinking millions of thoughts. Right now, as we sit here, there are millions of thoughts in our minds. Can we see them? No, we only see a few prominent thoughts clearly, but countless subtle thoughts are constantly arising. Because they arise so quickly, we feel as if we have a self. And because we believe we have a separate, distinct self from everyone else, we get angry at others, compete with them, become selfish and hoard for ourselves, become greedy, get angry when others insult us, envy those more capable than us, and feel superior to others. This is all due to the illusion of self. Therefore, we must transcend this illusion. But to transcend the illusion of self, we must know that we don't truly have a self. And we must deeply practice meditation. However, there's a phenomenon. Indian religions also practice meditation. They achieve a very pure and clear state of mind. When they pass through the stage of mental agitation to mental purity, a bright awareness suddenly arises and they call it the true self, the divine self, the sacred self. They stop there, and their ego is still present. This is described in the Upanishads. This is the point that our Buddha transcended. When the Indian masters spoke of the true self, sacred self, and they stopped there. That's where the ego still remained. Our Buddha went to learn from these masters. He quickly attained what they had. Then, with the wisdom and merit of a future Buddha, he asked his teachers, Alara Kalama and Uddaka Ramapada, when I attain this state, is there still a self or not? If there is still a self, it's not liberation. But if there is no self, then who knows they have attained it? His question was so intricate that the masters couldn't answer, and the Buddha left. He left to find a path to completely eradicate the ego, because only then could he achieve true liberation. He practiced extreme asceticism for 6 years but didn't succeed. He realized that asceticism doesn't lead to non-self. He returned to the path of meditation and finally attained enlightenment. His mind became clear and bright, and others called it the true self, divine self, sacred self. At that moment, the ego was still present. But the Buddha continued to transcend that state entirely, and he achieved complete non-self. He became the Buddha. Remember, this is where the difference lies. There are 3 stages of practice. Ordinary self, the common, mundane ego like ours. Pure mind/true self. When one practices to a higher stage, the mind becomes pure and a true self or divine self emerges. But the ego, this point of non-self, is a right view that we must establish in our Buddhist practice. It is an important right view that should not be underestimated. When we practice, we must follow the Buddha's example and aim for non-self. For example, when we reach a certain level of purity in our minds, even if we attain something, we must be vigilant that the ego may still be lurking, not completely gone. Because other Indian religions were stopped by it, we too must be very vigilant that the ego always remains. What is non-self? Some practitioners understand that non-self means nothing remains. That's not correct. When the ego is completely eliminated, the practitioner becomes the entire universe. All sentient beings. Remember that, because there is no ego, their compassion and love for sentient beings are absolute and infinite. While we still have an ego, our love for others is limited. But for a Buddha or an Arhat with no ego, their love extends to all sentient beings absolutely. So, non-self means absolute compassion. Non-self also means absolute wisdom, because someone without an ego knows the entire universe. So, non-self is incredibly profound. But sometimes when we practice to a certain stage, we think it's enough and stop there, thus failing to achieve non-self. This is something we must be vigilant about. Remember, non-self is a right view that must be established. Right view. Impermanence. The 4th right view we must establish is the principle of impermanence. This right view is also known as prajna wisdom at a fundamental level. The principle of impermanence states that everything changes, whether quickly or slowly, but everything must change. Some things change very slowly, like a rock left by the roadside. It might take millions of years to erode. Other things change very quickly, like the life of a mayfly or a flower which blooms in the morning and wilts in the evening. Our human lives, if there are no accidents or serious illnesses, slowly decline from 80 or 90 years old and then pass away. All things in life change. They can change from good to bad or from bad to good, but they must change. For example, if we plant a good seed in a pile of manure, is the manure good or bad? Bad. But unexpectedly, a plant grows from it, yielding beautiful flowers and delicious fruits. So it changes from bad to good. But then those flowers and fruits, which are now good, will eventually wither and decay as their lifespan ends. Life constantly changes in this way, from good to bad, from good to bad. When it changes from bad to good, it brings us optimism and joy in life. When it changes from good to bad, it brings us pessimism and disillusionment. For instance, a child suddenly grows into a healthy young adult. This is a change from bad to good, filling us with joy and energy. But then, that strong health suddenly weakens, slowly declining and eventually leading to death. This change from good to bad makes us pessimistic and weary of life. When we understand the principle of impermanence, we transcend both pessimism and optimism, seeing the changes in everything in life with a mind of liberation, neither pessimistic nor optimistic. Can we do that? Yes, that is the principle of impermanence, an important right view. When we see all things changing in this way, our minds are not attached. A non-attached mind greatly aids meditation. We don't rejoice when good things happen, and we don't grieve when bad things happen. This mind, less joyful and less sorrowful, greatly supports the tranquility of our meditation. Within this change, it becomes the cycle of rebirth from good to bad, from bad to good. It constantly revolves like the cycle of rebirth. If we don't understand impermanence, we cannot stop because the power of impermanence constantly sweeps us along. However, when we see everything in life as impermanent, we must be careful not to fall into a state of apathy like a tree or a stone. If someone asks us something and we just say impermanence, that's a dangerous sign of apathy. We must understand that even though life is impermanent, every person and every sentient being is precious and lovable because we all share the same suffering of the cycle of rebirth. Therefore, we understand that everything in life changes. Everyone is born, grows old, gets sick, and dies. Everything experiences rise and fall. We know this very clearly. So our minds are not attached to anything. But we must also cultivate compassion and love for all beings. Only then will we not fall into apathy like a tree or a stone. That is right view. Remember that. In seeing everything as impermanent, we also cultivate compassion and ethics. We are grateful for good things and firmly say no to bad things. That's how it should be. It's not about saying impermanence, so anything is fine, good or bad. That's being unprincipled, lacking wisdom, and being foolish. The wisdom of impermanence knows that all things change. But it also cultivates gratitude for goodness and firmly rejects evil. Remember that. Right view, mental tranquility. The fifth right view is meditation or mental tranquility. Mental tranquility is a right view, an important means, and a crucial path. We will discuss it extensively in the sections on right mindfulness and right concentration. But because we are discussing right view, mental tranquility is an important perspective in spiritual practice. It is a crucial right view. As Buddhists, we must always maintain a tranquil mind. That is a fundamental right view that cannot be lost. Remember, is right thought active or still? Active because it involves thinking. Is right action active or still? Active because it involves performing merit and we must calculate how to do it. Is right livelihood active or still? Active because we must earn a living in this world. So these are all active, but ultimately they lead to what? Right concentration. Remember, right concentration is the goal. If the other elements are correct, right thought is correct, right action is correct, right livelihood is correct, then they will lead to meditation. But if those are incorrect, we will not achieve right concentration. Therefore, whatever we do, whatever we practice, whatever good karma we create, remember that the ultimate goal is right concentration, inner mental tranquility. The perspective of inner mental tranquility is an important perspective on practice that we must not forget. However, according to the sequential progression of the Eightfold Path, right concentration is at the very end. But as we said, the Eightfold Path is practiced both sequentially and interactively. While we are cultivating right thought and right view, we must also cultivate right concentration simultaneously. That is, while we are making merit or contemplating the Dharma, we must always skillfully maintain inner mental tranquility. This is the important perspective, not to wait until we have cultivated all the preceding elements before beginning to cultivate right concentration. If one thinks this way, they still don't understand the Eightfold Path. Why? Because the Eightfold Path involves cultivating all 8 elements simultaneously. Initially, we might emphasize right view, right thought, right speech, and right action. Later, we might lean towards right concentration. But at the same time, all 8 elements must be fully cultivated. And it is always important to keep our minds pure and tranquil. We have a gauge to measure our spiritual strength, inner mental tranquility. Being able to maintain a tranquil and unshakable mind in all situations indicates spiritual strength. If we encounter difficulties and our minds become agitated and uneasy, then our spiritual strength is very weak. This is a crucial measure. Of course, mental unshakability is just one criterion for measurement. There are other criteria, such as compassion, which is also a measure of spiritual strength, but we'll discuss that another time. Today, we're only discussing using inner mental tranquility as a measure of our spiritual strength. In every situation, we assess whether we are joyful, sorrowful, proud, angry, resentful, envious, or selfish. We must always examine this to maintain mental tranquility. That is an important perspective. Right view, applying Dharma to life. The sixth right view is to use the Dharma to analyze and apply it to every aspect of life. This is an important right view because the ultimate purpose of the Dharma is for us to practice within this life, to live within this life, not to escape into the forest or desert. Therefore, a crucial perspective on practice is that the Dharma must be applicable to all events in life. For example, if there's a fire at an international trade center, we must be able to analyze its causes and effects through the lens of karma. We must apply it to our own lives. If we are wealthy, how should we practice? If we are poor, how should we practice? It must be applicable. And this is a right view, a crucial perspective on practice. Buddhism must be connected to life. Therefore, the sixth patriarch said beautifully, the Buddha Dharma is in the world, not separate from the world. Apart from the world, to seek Bodhi is like seeking a rabbit with a horn. Do you understand? It sounds like a mantra. The Buddha Dharma is in the world, meaning the Dharma is right here in this world, right now. Not separate from the world, to seek Bodhi means we don't need to leave this world to find enlightenment. We find enlightenment right here, living in this practical world. If we abandon this life, there will be no other enlightenment. We live with this life, with these people, and this is where we practice. Therefore, a crucial perspective on practice, the sixth right view, is that we must apply the Dharma to life and illuminate all aspects of life with the Dharma. The purpose of Buddhism is to bring peace and happiness to life and to guide life. So, the teachings must be practical and applicable to this life. Now, we must learn to look at everything that happens in the world and correctly interpret it through the Dharma, rather than through common perceptions. For example, if two neighbors are arguing, with dirty water flowing from one yard to another, how do we interpret it? According to the Dharma, if we see two families arguing over water using worldly reasoning, we might say the gutter is at fault or it broke, letting water flow into the other person's yard. But if we look through the Dharma, we say it's their fault for not being tolerant and forgiving of each other, for not talking things out. We must always use the Dharma to analyze such situations. For instance, if an economy is declining, why? Economists might argue it's due to market surplus, crop failures, or something else. But from a Dharma perspective, it's because the collective merit of society has declined. Why has the collective merit declined? Because people haven't diligently made merit or have been wasteful. When people spend their money foolishly on frivolous entertainment, they deplete their merit and the nation's economy will decline. So, we shouldn't think that seeing many extravagant entertainment venues indicates a civilized nation. Not at all. Those are the seeds of that nation's decline. For example, when an economy prospers, they immediately open nightclubs. Many think this is a sign of civilization, but those are the vulnerable points of that nation. Because people waste money there, a single ecstasy pill costs hundreds of thousands, getting drunk costs millions, wasting health and time unnecessarily. Meanwhile, they should be using that money, health and time to practice and do good for others. So, the more lavish entertainment venues open, the faster the nation will become poor and its economy will decline. We judge this through the Dharma, not by superficial worldly appearances. Or, if we see someone who is very talented but unsuccessful, worldly people might say it's because they haven't met their time or opportunity. But from a Dharma perspective, it's due to some past karma hindering them. And sometimes, one of those hindering karmas is due to thinking oneself too talented. We must use the eyes of the Dharma to observe everything happening in this world. Throughout our lives, as we live, work, and practice, right view will constantly be refined until the day we become a Buddha. Remember, right view is never complete. Today, we are cultivating right view, establishing it, but we will continuously refine our perspective on practice, making it deeper and more correct each day. We live, we practice, we work, we learn, and so every day right view grows. Questions and answers. Question people who die in fires. What kind of karma did they create in past lives? It's very sensitive to speak about the karma of someone who has died in an accident, as it can be offensive. Of course, according to Buddhism, we only experience negative retribution if we've created negative karma. That's natural. But if someone has just died and their family is grieving, saying, "It's because of what you did in a past life," will only cause more sorrow. It's like an insult. Therefore, we don't discuss karma in such cases, especially when the situation is still raw. Perhaps we can revisit it years later. Instead, we blame the obvious. It was because the welders were careless and caused the fire. It was due to an outdated and ineffective fire suppression system. The building layout was illogical and prone to hazards. There was a short circuit. The wiring was old. We blame those things, not anyone's past karma. We go to the site, light incense, offer condolences, and pray for the deceased. If you want to discuss karma, come back in 10 years. Question: why does the Buddha image only have one index finger pointing to the sky and one pointing to the earth when he was born? Let our abbot answer that question. Question: if I tie up my dog, is that a karmic act? It's difficult to answer that directly. Sometimes when we tie an animal, we create negative karma. And we might have to suffer imprisonment later. But sometimes it's not a long sentence, just a few months. When we raise a pet, we love it. But remember, we bear the karmic consequence of tying it up. If we tie it for 3 years and it's an animal with little merit, then we might have to endure imprisonment for a week or 10 days, compensating for tying a human being. Now, if a person is very evil and they need to be imprisoned and the police do so, the police officer who apprehends and incarcerates a criminal has merit, not demerit. Remember that. They don't have to go to jail later. So, if your dog is truly unruly, tying it up for a bit to make it less wild might actually create some merit. And perhaps you'll be tied up yourself for a few days later, just as a minor karmic consequence. Question: if a loved one has passed away, what should we do if they might be reborn as an animal? Is there any benefit to praying for them? What else can we do to help them achieve liberation? Firstly, we don't know where they've been reborn. If we knew precisely, that would be different. But generally, if our loved ones didn't practice during their lives, after death, they might be reborn in lower realms like hell or as hungry ghosts or even as animals. If we are practitioners, we should make merit and dedicate it to them. We perform many meritorious deeds and dedicate the merit to them. Because of our connection, they will receive the benefit. If they are in hell, they will be released sooner. If they are hungry ghosts, they will be released sooner. If they are animals, they will die sooner and be reborn in a better state. So sometimes, a pet that we love dearly might suddenly fall ill and die. It could be because that pet has completed its karmic debt and is now ready for a better rebirth. The death of the dog means it's liberated sooner. So, the best way is to make merit and dedicate it to them. Question: is it good for us to share meals with our ancestors after offering food on the altar? It's good in terms of filial piety, but not always beneficial in practice. We can offer food on the altar, but don't invite them to eat with you and your family. If the beings who come to eat are hungry ghosts or wandering spirits, it's better not to touch the food after they've partaken. Give it to dogs or birds. They absorb the spiritual essence from the food. If you eat it afterwards, your own spiritual awareness might become dull. This is especially true for offerings made on New Year's Eve on the sidewalk. Absolutely do not touch those. The beings who partake of those offerings are often those with very little merit. However, if your ancestors were reborn in peaceful realms before they passed away, then eating the offerings is fine. Because those who come to partake are blessed beings, it can even bring you more spiritual power. Especially fruits offered to the Buddha, or water offered to the Buddha, or rice offered to the Buddha. If you partake of these afterwards, your mind will become clearer and brighter. So, it depends on who is partaking.